Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to another recent reads on Sunday, a video in which I chat with you about books that I've read recently. And I have 5 books today I want to talk to you about, and the first 2 I read for the Reading Women Challenge 2019. I guess you are all familiar with the podcast Reading Women, which is run by Kendra Winchester, who also has a BookTube channel, and her friend Autumn Privet, and also additional contributors. Some of them are on BookTube. It's a really fantastic podcast. There are author interviews, but there are also topic-related talks or the contributors who talk about certain areas of books, certain kind of books. So it's really, if you haven't checked it out, it's really worth your while. I'll leave a link, of course, down below. And what they also have is they have a yearly challenge with 24 prompts and 2 bonus prompts. And what I really like about this challenge is, first of all, that it runs for a whole year. So it gives you plenty of time to complete the challenges. And the prompts that Autumn and Kendra come up with, they are always, for me at least, a really good way of expanding my reading horizons, because they are prompts for books that I would probably not pick up. So go check it out, the podcast, but also the challenge. And the first book I want to talk to you about is a really good example of a book that I probably wouldn't have picked up, because the prompt was read a play, and I hardly ever read plays. But boy, was I glad that I picked up this one, and that's Margaret Edson Wit, first published in 1999. There's also a movie adaptation. I will leave a link to the trailer down below. 2001, I think the movie was released, with Emma Thompson in the main role. Margaret Edson was born in 1961. She lives in Washington. She's an American writer, but she only ever wrote this one play, Wit. She's an elementary school teacher, and since the publication almost 20 years ago of the play, she hasn't published anything else. Wit is a short play, only 1 act, set in a hospital. You have a main protagonist, and that is Vivian Baring, 50-something-year-old English professor, very renowned, very well known, her research and teaching focus are the Holy Sonnets of John Donne. When the play opens, Vivian is diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. She's hospitalized for experimental treatment, and the play follows the last days of her life, because we know right from the start that she is going to die. So she reflects back on her life, on her teaching, on the Holy Sonnets, but it's also a play in which, it's quite brutal, and it takes a quite brutal look at medical treatment as well. Whether it's the professor who just wants to have his experimental drug tested, or whether it's the young doctor who has no bedside manner whatsoever, or whether it's the nurse who is the only one in the play who actually shows the patient some kindness. I thought it was a fantastic play. The movie I rewatched the movie then, it's really good, but the play is fantastic. So I can highly recommend it. If you want to read a play once in a while, then try Margaret Edson Wit. And the second book I want to talk to you about, that I also read for a prompt of the Reading Women Challenge 2019, and that was the prompt, a YA book written by a woman of color. And as if you follow me, you know that I hardly ever read YA, and I picked quite a famous book, Jacqueline Woodson, Brown Girl Dreaming, first published in 2014. Jacqueline Woodson is a Black American writer, mainly children's books and young adult books, but she recently also published a book for adults, another Brooklyn. Yes, I think. Anyway, Brown Girl Dreaming is written in verse. It's a memoir about Jacqueline Woodson's childhood in South Carolina and New York in the 1960s and 70s. It's a beautifully written story about Jacqueline Woodson growing up. It deals with difficult and important subjects like racism, but also with Jacqueline Woodson's urge to write stories, to invent stories. I adored the writing. I thought the verse that worked really well, the rhythm of the book. My only quote unquote problem with the book, why I didn't, for me, it wasn't an excellent book, was the way in which religion was discussed in the book. Jacqueline and her family are Jehovah's Witnesses, and I mean, I would have wished that there would have been at least a little bit of a critical reflection of that domination in particular. Jacqueline Woodson is an intelligent woman, and I'm only happy for her that she didn't fall ill or need an operation or a blood transfusion or anything of the kind that Jehovah's Witnesses don't allow. So that sort of didn't sit well with me, especially in a book for children or young adults. But it's beautifully done. It's a very tender and moving memoir, or fictionalized memoir written in verse. So if you're interested in that and haven't read it, it's certainly worth checking out. The next two books I want to talk to you about are translated works, because of course it's August, Women in Translation Month, so we are all hopefully reading more works by women, translated books. I made reading plans. I uploaded a video last Wednesday about my reading plans. I'll leave a link down below if you want to check it out. And one of the books that I said that I would read, and I did, is this one, Underground Time, by French author Delphine de Vigan, translated from the French by George Miller. The French original was published in 2009, and this one 2011. And as I said in this video about my reading plans, I really love Delphine de Vigan's work. I've read a couple of books by her already, and I'm slowly making my way through her backlist. This was a buddy read with Terry over at Miss Terry B. Please check out her channel. I'll leave a link down below. She's a really wonderful booktuber, and she just recently came back from a prolonged hiatus. So if you don't know her, it's really worth checking her out and subscribing. This book is set in Paris in 2008, and it's set in one day, the 20th of May, but there's quite some back flashes to what happened to the two protagonists previously. The book is split and told from two point of views. We have Marilyn, who is in her early 40s, widowed with 3 young children, and she works as a deputy marketing director in a big multinational company, and she's very successful, or at least she was until recently. And then we have Thibault, same age, beginning of his 40s, and he is an emergency doctor, which means that he drives around Paris in his car. He gets patients' addresses from the dispatch, and then he treats those patients. On the blurb, it tells you that, and then it tells you also, like it said here, surely a meeting must be inevitable between those two characters. And that completely sets you on the wrong foot, because that's not what's going to happen. So don't pick up the book, expecting this meeting between Madeline and Thibault. I'm just saying it because I had difficulty letting go of that expectation, and that sort of spoiled the book for me, which is really horrible. So blur people, get your act together. Anyway, Madeline is facing serious problems at work. Her boss, Jacques, is a bullying prick. She had good relations with him, but then there was a sort of a fallout. And since then, Madeline is slowly but surely completely frozen out. She's not given any work anymore. Her office is moved to the basement without a window. She doesn't have computer access. And it's all done in a very subtle way, this kind of mobbing that actually occurs. And I'm sure Delphine de Vigan either has a friend who experienced that, or she has done really excellent research, because it really resonated. It was very realistic. So we follow Madeline during that day in which she reflects back on the past 9 months when this all started to happen. Thibault is on this day has just split from his girlfriend Lila, and that preoccupies his whole day. There's the fact that Lila didn't love him, and that finally although he loved her, he split from her. That backstory didn't quite resonate with me as well, but anyway, the book is about two people being isolated. Madeline, by her boss, by the evil forces of her boss. She's isolated from her work, but also from her co-workers. And Thibault isolates himself, so to speak, because he's so much in his mind, in his head, during that day about this breakup, that he can't really meaningfully connect with the people he treats. It's also about isolation in a big city. Madeline always takes the subway, so we have this claustrophobic experience that you're packed with a lot of people, but you don't connect with them. And Thibault sits in his car all day and is in traffic jams, and you are surrounded by people, but you're isolated nevertheless. I thought the discussion of the theme of isolation and also, the work isolation that Madeline experienced were really excellent. The backstory, as I said, Thibault, that didn't work that well for me. And I was starting the book with a complete wrong idea because of the blurb. But I can certainly recommend this book. It's beautifully written. A slow-paced, really quiet book about two people being isolated in a big city. And the second book that I read for Women in Translation Month, actually I read that before Underground Time, but anyway, is Marilyn and Me by Ji-Min Lee, translated from the Korean by Chi-Young Kim. This is the English, yes, it's the English translation. It's the UK edition. The US edition will be published in September with the abhorrent title, The Starlet and the Spy. I'm not going to say anything more. Anyway, Ji-Min Lee is a renowned Korean author. I haven't read anything by her, even though other works have been translated. So this is my first novel by Ji-Min Lee. And it's set in 1954 in Korea, in South Korea, just during the aftermath of the Korean War. The novel is set in 4 days. The 4 days in which, and that's an historical fact, Marilyn Monroe, who had just married Joe DiMaggio and was on a honeymoon in Japan and took a break, quote unquote, from the honeymoon to visit Korea and perform for the American soldiers there. And Ji-Min Lee took this historical fact and made the translator for Marilyn Monroe, who was called Alice, in the book, a young Korean woman working as a typist on the US base, the main protagonist of the story. So there is this relationship between Alice and Marilyn Monroe, but the main story is about Alice and what she experienced during the war. A relationship with different men she had during the war. There is at the beginning already the hint of something that she did, Alice, which had horrible consequences, and slowly during the course of the book we learn what that was and how she tries to deal with it. I immensely enjoyed Alice's story, her work as a typist on the base, the interaction with people on that base, but also especially the backstory. It's quite a harrowing story, of course, because it's set during the war. The tie-in with the visit of Marilyn Monroe and the relationship between Alice as a translator and Marilyn Monroe didn't work that well for me, in the sense that I didn't quite see why it had to be in the story. For me, it would have been enough, or maybe even better, if we just had Alice's story. So it's a bit of a mixed bag because of this historical fact of Marilyn Monroe, and I didn't think the relationship between Alice and Marilyn would have been a necessary part of the book. But still, I enjoyed reading it, and if you're looking for newly translated work from the Korean, this book is certainly a good choice. And the last book is a book that I read end of July, I think, but I only want to talk about it briefly because I have to reread it, and that is Janet Winterson's new novel Frankenstein, which was just published in the summer. It's about Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, but also a reinvention of the famous Dr. Frankenstein in modern times. I really liked it. But I want to talk about the book after I reread it, because I feel that I missed so much. So the only thing that I can tell you now is that I really enjoyed it. I think it's an excellent book, and I will talk about it more after I read it the second time and sort of can come up with something more, profound than I really liked it. Anyway, so those were my recent reads. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'm looking forward to talking to you down in the comments, and I will see you all soon in the next one. Bye-bye.